40% of the kids in my school system, DC Public Schools, drop out by senior year.
And 100% of the girls from my all-girl private high school go to college.
Both of our schools in the DC area are not less than 3 miles away from each other, and yet they couldn't be any more different.
The cool thing about Joy and I is that we're total opposites. I'm an African-American female that attends a prominently white institution.
And I'm a white Jewish male that attends a predominantly African-American institution.
And us being the minority at our schools allows us to experience different things and people making assumptions and generalizations based on our outer appearance, also known as stereotypes. Actually, a couple weeks ago, Joy and I led a facilitation at my school in which in one of the activities, we asked the kids to come up with words associated with public school kids. They said the following: dirty, drugs, violent, poor, and stupid.
Hearing these words hurt, especially coming from a public school education. One word especially stood out to me, the word stupid. What I see at my school is not kids who are stupid, but kids who aren't pushed to do as well as they possibly can. The administrators and teachers at my school do the best they can to tell these kids to get straight A's, but 3/4 of a teenager's life is spent outside of the school, so the environment outside of the school is what really influences them. People like friends, parents, siblings, and especially the media influence a kid's decisions. Kids are young and moldable. Stereotypes, when they are used against somebody, can internalize in that person, make them feel that the stereotype is true, although it may not be, and make them believe it.
So what happens when you start to internalize these negative things that people tell you? The mind is a very, very powerful tool. And once you start to believe something, you start to act upon it. And it can send one down a downward spiral.
Now, stereotypes come from everywhere, right? They come from friends, parents, community leaders, teachers, administrators, music, and especially the media. But who do stereotypes affect? And again, the answer is everyone. Not just public school kids. That can be affected because of your race, your culture, or your religion. Now, how do they affect these people? Sometimes, obviously, you see movies and you've seen television series about people being bullied, but most of the time it's unconscious decisions that we make on an everyday basis. Let's take an example. Say somebody's walking down the street and they're frowning. When you walk by them, you automatically have a bunch of unconscious stereotypes about this person, although they may not be true, and this will affect the decisions you have when you interact with the person.
So let's talk about conscious and subconscious thoughts. So conscious is what you're aware of, like I'm talking to you guys, that's conscious. But subconscious is what lies beneath the surface, and you may not know it's there until someone brings it to your attention or you're asked to think about it. For example, the unconscious thought would be the kids at my school who didn't realize that they harbored some of these negative stereotypes associated with public school kids in their heads. They were never asked to think about it, and so which leads me to my next point of dialogue. Dialogue is very important when you're trying to understand people and get to know what they are thinking and saying so we can stop making generalizations that probably are wrong. Talk about people's religions, their cultures, what they go through, proud moments, sad moments, and honestly, at the end, we can ultimately live in a world that's more understanding.
Now, let's be honest, not every kid gets this opportunity. When you guys go home, you obviously don't talk to your parents all the time about stereotypes that you have about other people. And because of this, you grow old with stereotypes that are unconscious. Let's take another example. Let's say Daria is the employer, and I come in, and I roll up my sleeve, and I have a bunch of tattoos on my arm. If I'm the interviewee, Daria already has a bunch of unconscious stereotypes about who I am, how smart I am, if I hadn't worked hard in high school, about what college I go to. She hasn't even looked at my resume. All right? These are already unconscious stereotypes that have gone through her head, and they can affect her in her decisions.
And so what happens when we grow old with these stereotypes is that we're just giving in to the ignorance of the world. You don't have to let this happen. How can the world progress if we as individuals don't progress?
And this brings me to my point, which is when we see stereotypes and prejudice, we can't ignore it, right? When you see it in your communities, you can't ignore it. When you see it in your schools, you can't ignore it. You have to step up and be a leader. Being president of my school, I try to inspire kids to get the best education they can, and I try to tell kids, you know, this is what you're saying, but this is how it will affect the students that you're talking about. And because I try to inspire the kids to get a better education, the reason for that is because 50 years ago, men, women, and children marched, protested, and died to get a quality education. Now people have a free education, and they're not taking advantage of it. They're dropping out. The stereotype is for them to fail. If they have a dream, stereotypes should not hold them back.
So which brings us here today, dream it, do it. Joe and I, we imagine living in a world where we won't be judged by our outward appearance or how we look or how we act. We'll be judged for the interior and the beautiful soul that lies beneath all of us. In my school, in my community, I actually lead diversity facilitations where I ask people to look beyond the surface and trying to understand and think about what others are going through. And I also participate in a lot of diversity clubs because I feel that when you learn more about other people, you can learn more about yourself. So we challenge all of you to go back to your schools and take some of this with you. Use it. Like when you hear friends or teachers or administrators talking about things or making a generalization about someone or a stereotype or assumption just because of their outward appearance, challenge them and say, hey, do you really agree with that? Or, someone may find that offensive. And Joe and I, we know this is hard. We actually had to step up and do this sometimes in our communities, and it could be hard seeing people's face and reactions, but it's a necessary step to take into creating a better world.
Ignorance was bliss in 1984. Don't let ignorant stereotypes affect your decisions. Thank you.